Welcome back to the channel. It's Big Chris. I've still got that big receding hairline, and in today's video we're talking about one of the world's most famous raiding parties. We're talking about the British S.A.S. Now think about your morning and then compare it to their morning. You wake up and you have a leisurely morning, maybe wake up at 7, 8 o'clock. You'll have a quick shower, maybe a quick wash, jump in the car, put the radio on, bit of Westlife, bit of Boyzone, have a sing-song, you get to work, you have a coffee or a tea, a little chatter with your work colleagues. Pretty relaxing morning. S.A.S, forget that. They think to themselves, I'm going to be jumping out of an aeroplane today. But not only that, can you see that anti-aircraft gun? Can you see that machine gun or that big German tank? Not only am I jumping out of an aeroplane, I'm going to be jumping into that action. That is what the S.A.S do. These people are incredible. And this is the history of the British S.A.S. So the S.A.S stands for Special Air Service, and it was created during the Second World War by British Colonel David Stirling. And this happened in July 1941. Now, the British were fighting the Germans hard in North Africa, but the Germans were putting up tough resistance. The British needed to infiltrate those German positions and get men in behind enemy lines. So the S.A.S was founded as a parachute regiment, and it had two purposes: raiding and recon. Now, to fool the Germans, the British called this new regiment L-Detachment. So this new S.A.S detachment first saw action in November 1941, where they were parachuted in behind enemy lines to help raise the siege of the Libyan city of Tobruk. Now, due to the adverse conditions, the men failed this mission. But their second mission was actually a lot more successful, and they teamed up with a group of people known as the Long Range Desert Group. And in fact, they were very successful. They destroyed 60 aircraft at 3 separate air bases. In September 1942, the S.A.S were known as the 1st S.A.S Squadron. And this consisted of 4 British squadrons, 1 Free French squadron, 1 Greek squadron, and some men known as the Special Boat Service. Now, in January 1943, disaster strikes. British Colonel David Stirling is captured in Tunisia, and he is replaced by British Captain Paddy Mayne, and he is given command of the 1st S.A.S. And in fact, he changes the squadron's name to the Special Raiding Squadron. Now, in 1943 to 1944, more squadrons are created. So we have S.A.S 2, 3, 4 and 5. And by 1944, all of these squadrons are merged together to create the S.A.S Brigade. Now, raiding behind enemy lines, as you can imagine, is pretty bad. It's a terrible thing to do when you have people shooting at you. And to make it worse, in 1942, Hitler creates a new order known as the Commando Order. And this is where any British personnel caught in behind German lines, the order is execution. 2 examples of this were operations that were taking place in France. So the first one was Operation Bullbasket, where 34 S.A.S personnel were executed. The second one is Operation Leuthen, where 31 personnel were sadly executed. Now, by the time we get to the end of the war in 1945, Britain believes that it doesn't need the S.A.S anymore, and it actually disbands the brigade. But then the world slips into what we know as the Cold War, espionage, spying. So Britain believes the S.A.S, or a special raiding party, might actually be quite useful in the years to come. So within 1946, 1 year after the war, the brigade is brought back. But this time it sits as part of the British Territorial Army. In 1950, the S.A.S were going to be seeing action in Korea as part of the Korean War, but they didn't end up going. So instead, the same men were sent down to Malaysia, where they were given the job of helping the British to restore rule over their colony in what is known as the Malayan Emergency. Whilst they were in Malaysia, several squadrons had been created, and by 1952, the need for a regular army S.A.S. regiment had been recognised. So as part of the territorial army, the S.A.S. were either known as the 1st S.A.S. or simply S.A.S. But now they've been transferred over to the regular British Army, they're going to be known by a new name, the 22nd S.A.S. Regiment. Now in 1959, the 23rd Regiment was created as a reserve recon unit. And after this date, the S.A.S. has been sent on many raiding and recon missions around the world. And these include Oman, Borneo and Northern Ireland. And in 1980, we have what is known as the Iranian embassy siege in London. And this is where a lot of people who had never heard of the S.A.S. first start to know about the S.A.S. So this is where 6 Iranians, they stormed the Iranian embassy in London and they hold the staff hostage. Now, the reason for this was that they actually wanted a region of Iran known as Khorasan to be sovereign and free. So the S.A.S. were deployed onto the rooftop of the embassy. They scaled down the walls and they made their way into the building. And fortunately, they were able to stop the siege and save as many hostages as possible. Now, the S.A.S. were heavily involved in covert operations during the Soviet-Afghan War. They actually helped the Afghan troops in things such as weapons and explosives. Now, during the 1982 Falklands War, they were deployed on both the 14th and 15th of May in night raids against the Argentinian-held Pebble Island. And in fact, they were really successful. They destroyed 11 aircraft that were stationed on the island. Now, in more recent years, the S.A.S. have been involved in the aftermath of 9/11. They were part of the big coalition that were sent into Afghanistan to destroy Al-Qaeda. Now, the S.A.S. also took part in the Iraq War, and they carried out a lot of the recon before the 2003 invasion. The British usually don't comment on S.A.S. matters. But what we do know is that today the S.A.S. is comprised of 3 separate departments. You have the 22nd Regiment, and then you have 2 reserve regiments, the 21st and the 23rd. Now, the 22nd S.A.S. Regiment normally has a strength of somewhere between 400 and 600 personnel, and the regiment is then split into 4 separate operational squadrons. We have A, B, D and G, and each of these squadrons consists of 65 members, and they are led by a major. Now, the 65 members of the squadron are then split into 4 separate troops. So a troop consists of 16 personnel. So you will have 16 boat troops, 16 air troops, 16 mobility troops and 16 mountain troops. And within these 16 troops, you have men or members who are specialised in things such as signalling, such as linguistics, you've got medicine or medication, you have demolition and all these specialist skills. So let's now talk about what it takes to join the S.A.S. So the S.A.S. don't recruit from the general public. And in fact, all their recruits are already members of the British Army, usually from either a parachute regiment or the Marines. Now, the selection process takes place over 5 weeks, and they head over to the Welsh valleys of the Brecon Beacons and Seney Bridge. Now, at the start, they usually have 200 candidates, and they have to start with a general fitness test, which is 50 sit-ups in 2 minutes, 60 press-ups in 2 minutes, 1.5 mile run in 10 minutes, an 8-mile march in 2 hours, then the endurance, which is cross-country up and down mountains. Now, once they finish this mountain phase, they then go on to what's known as the jungle phase. This can take place in places like Belize, Brunei, Malaysia, and what the candidates are taught out there is survival and navigational skills. Now, the final test is what we know as the resistance to interrogation. Now, this is a grueling 36-hour experience, and by this point, only 10%, that's only 30 candidates, are usually left. So when we talk about the S.A.S, one of the most famous television shows that demonstrates everything that I've talked about so far is S.A.S. Who Dares Wins. This gives the average person who may have never been in the military an idea of what these individuals go through to join the S.A.S. It tells you about the training, it tells you about the interrogation, about the endurance, about the mental and physical stress these individuals put on their body in their pursuit to become members of the British S.A.S. So there we are, everybody. That is the history of the British S.A.S. So thank you very much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe if you liked everything that you saw, and have an amazing day.